My husband is annoying. Throwaway account because my husband is an avid Reddit user and also follows me. I have been with my husband for 8 years and married for 4. He has given me 2 beautiful sons, and he has a daughter from a previous relationship that we have every other week. I love my husband so deeply, but I'm not sure how long I can keep loving him because of how annoying he is. Hear me out. We are both in our early 30s. I can't watch a movie without this man starting to make funny sounds like beatboxing, rapping or shouting random words or phrases out loud. He is more rough with our sons than what they want him to be, and they can be rough, and it usually ends in tears. He throws them, pretends to beat them up, takes their stuff and runs off, calls them mean nicknames and plays practical jokes. I know I sound awful. I know it just looks like he's a loving dad heavily invested in his son's playtimes, but the boys really don't enjoy it. They nearly always beg him to stop, but it falls on deaf ears until I intervene. When the boys decide they want to play back, he immediately starts sulking and getting moody with them for being too rough. He is very insistent on creating his own questionable fashion choices and gets deeply hurt and offended if anyone tries to break it to him that, we worded in nicer times, he simply looks ridiculous. Examples of this would be his socks pulled up as high as they can go, usually up to his knees, and then he will roll his shorts up until they're about halfway up his thigh. This is just one example, I can list hundreds. He is an incredibly messy person to live with. His favorite habit is leaving his socks and boxers everywhere, tools everywhere, and just general day-to-day mess from not clearing up after himself. I love him deeply, and I do not feel I have the right to change someone, but I'm starting to think we are not compatible. I am worried I am just a huge buzzkill and my sons are very much like me. I'm worried he would be much happier in a jokey, non-serious family. I am worried I would be happier with a more serious man. I don't know who to talk to about this because everyone who knows us sees us as this picture-perfect family. There are daily arguments in our household. I am constantly having to separate him from our sons like he's also a child, and I can never enjoy adult time with him without him acting like a child. I don't know what to do other than just rant because it's eating me up inside. Our sons are 5 and 3. Let me analyze this story for you. This story is a raw and emotionally conflicted reflection on the invisible weight of living with a partner who never truly grows up and how that can erode intimacy, respect, and connection over time. On the surface, the narrator's husband appears to be a playful, quirky, and deeply involved father, a man who loves his children, finds joy in being silly, and is unafraid to break convention. But the heart of the story reveals a far more complicated and painful reality. This isn't about minor personality clashes or occasional frustration, it's about the profound dissonance that arises when one partner becomes emotionally exhausting, more like an additional child than an equal. The narrator is not simply annoyed by her husband's antics, she's overwhelmed, exhausted, and quietly heartbroken by the slow unraveling of respect and compatibility in their marriage. His constant joking, attention-seeking behavior, and refusal to respect boundaries, especially their sons, isn't just irritating, it's harmful. His idea of love and play involves teasing, chaos, and domination, often pushing their children to tears despite their clear requests for him to stop. This creates a deeply unsettling emotional landscape, where the children's emotional boundaries are repeatedly ignored, and the narrator is cast in the role of peacekeeper, constantly stepping in, constantly mitigating harm. Over time, that repeated role morphs from care into quiet resentment. It's not just about parenting styles, though that is a major fault line here. It's also about emotional maturity and relational balance. The husband's relentless immaturity, his exaggerated fashion choices, and his need to be the center of attention, be it through loud noises during a movie or sulking when he doesn't get his way, paint a picture of someone who is not just quirky, but chronically self-absorbed and emotionally underdeveloped. This leaves the narrator emotionally alone in the relationship. She's not married to a partner who shares her adult world, one of emotional nuance, responsibility, and reflection, but to someone who refuses to leave the realm of impulsive boyishness. What makes her experience so painful is not simply that her husband is annoying, plenty of marriages survive mild to moderate annoyance. It's that she feels trapped. She feels like she's the only adult in the room, raising 3 children instead of 2, and trying to hold together the illusion of a picture-perfect family while privately shouldering emotional and mental burdens that no one else sees. The image of their life, what friends and family believe, is a cruel contrast to the exhausting emotional labor she performs every day. Her husband's behaviors, which might seem harmless or amusing from the outside, are, in her lived experience, an ever-present strain that leaves her lonely and emotionally starved. The story is steeped in guilt. The narrator is careful not to paint herself as cruel or ungrateful. She acknowledges that her husband has given her beautiful children, that he's not abusive or evil, and that she does love him deeply, she emphasizes. And yet, that love is deteriorating under the weight of unmet emotional needs, repeated frustrations, and a growing sense that they are fundamentally incompatible. She worries she's a buzzkill, a bad wife, someone who's trying to stifle joy. But what she's really trying to stifle is chaos. What she's craving isn't control, it's peace, maturity, and emotional safety. What's perhaps most tragic is how isolated she feels in this struggle. She can't tell anyone the truth about her marriage because the performance they all witness, the fun dad, the wacky husband, is so compelling. She doesn't know how to reconcile the external perception with her internal reality, which adds another layer of loneliness and guilt. To outsiders, she might seem ungrateful, uptight, or even cruel. But to those who truly understand the toll of long-term emotional labor, the real tragedy is clear. She's been partnered with someone who refuses to grow up, and in doing so, he's made her grow old too quickly, emotionally burdened, constantly managing, always compensating. The dilemma she faces isn't just whether to stay or leave, it's whether she can continue living in a version of love that demands so much of her, while giving her so little peace in return. She wants her family to work. She wants to protect her children from the fallout. She doesn't want to tear apart the home they've built. But deep down, she's beginning to realize that love alone isn't enough when there's no shared sense of emotional adulthood. And while she doesn't say it outright, the fear that whispers through every line of her story is devastatingly clear. What if this is as good as it gets? What if it never changes? What if I lose myself in the process of trying to hold this together? This story is not just a rant. It's the quiet unraveling of a woman who once believed that love could bridge every gap until she realized she'd been trying to build that bridge alone. My family cared more about my drug-dealing thug of a cousin getting out of prison than me graduating with an engineering degree. I graduated 4 weeks ago with an electrical engineering degree with a job already lined up. I invited my entire family on my mother's side to a party the Saturday after the ceremony. I'll just quantify the attendance for comparison. My mom, 2/3 grandparents, 2/5 siblings, and their kids, 3/9 aunts and uncles, 3/27 cousins, and their kids, showed up. We had fun, but my mom bought way too much food. We expected more people to come. I just chalked it up to people being too busy. Last week my cousin got out of his 6-year stay in prison for dealing crack. His sister threw him a party at her house Saturday and so many people showed up it had to be moved to a local park. In attendance, myself, my mother, all of his grandparents, 5/5 of my siblings, 8/9 aunts and uncles, 22/27 of my cousins and a ton of his friends and associates and family related to him but not me. I know it's probably petty for me to be bothered by this, but I can't help but feel most of my family doesn't care about how much effort and sacrifices I made to get here. I was kicked out by abusive, now dead, stepdad when I was 17 and barely passed high school because I had to work 2 part-time jobs to keep a roof over my head. My cousin and I both went to the same ghetto high school and I had to deal with years of bullying and harassment for being one of the smart kids acting white and having a lighter complexion. I'm half black. I had to work until I was 22 to save up money for college, and once I was able to start my degree it took 6 years to complete because I had to work full-time for the first 4 years until I landed a scholarship and transferred to a university to finish the degree. My cousin is 2 years older than me. In high school he hung out with the same groups of kids that used to bully me and others like me. He spent 2 years as a senior and never ended up graduating. He has a long rap sheet of being a shitty human being. He got in trouble at 16 for being in a group of men who mugged and beat up a father just walking home after work but somehow avoided juvie. At 19 he was busted for being part of a vehicle theft ring, got kicked out of high school and spent 2 years in prison. At 23 he was busted selling crack after getting pulled over for speeding. He was originally going to get out on parole after 4 years but kept getting into fights in prison. Everyone knows he's violent and abusive to others, even his many girlfriends. Yet, most of my family seems to love him. I don't understand how my family can just ignore how bad of a person he is. I spent 6 years working my ass off to get ahead and almost no one cares. He spent 6 years in prison for being a violent thug selling poison to his community and is celebrated like a hero just for being released. Let me analyze this story for you. This story is not just about family favoritism, it's about the heartbreaking collision between merit and dysfunction, effort and apathy, transformation and stagnation. It's about what it means to fight tooth and nail to build a better life, only to be overlooked in favor of someone who has spent most of theirs tearing things down. The narrator's pain runs deeper than hurt feelings over a poorly attended graduation party. It's the emotional reckoning that comes when you realize the people who were supposed to care the most about your triumphs don't. Or at least, not in the way they should. On its surface, the story is a tale of 2 celebrations, one honoring a life built through perseverance, and another celebrating the return of a cousin whose life has been defined by chaos, criminality, and violence. The narrator graduated with a degree in electrical engineering after overcoming an abusive home life, poverty, and social rejection. Their journey was hard one, paved with jobs held through school, bullying endured, and years spent working long hours while studying just to survive. What they accomplished should be monumental to their family. It is the embodiment of everything that breaks generational cycles. And yet, their achievement was met with silence, apathy, and the absence of most of their extended family. In contrast, the cousin, someone who, by every measurable standard, has harmed others and rejected opportunity, was welcomed home from prison with open arms and overwhelming support. The turnout to his celebration wasn't just larger, it was loud, joyful, and deeply communal. His flaws, his crimes, his repeated harm to others, were seemingly erased the moment he returned, while the narrator's accomplishments were barely acknowledged. That kind of comparison doesn't just sting. It destabilizes your entire sense of self-worth and belonging. This isn't just jealousy. It's existential grief. It's the realization that meritocracy, the belief that hard work leads to recognition and respect, doesn't always apply, especially within families where dysfunction, history, and tribal loyalty often outweigh fairness. The narrator's family appears to rally not around what's right, but around what's familiar, what's flashy, what fits their emotional narrative, even if it means turning a blind eye to someone's violence and toxicity. The cousin isn't loved for who he is, necessarily, he's loved for how well he plays a role. The prodigal son, the misunderstood bad boy, the one who gets cheered simply for surviving, no matter how much destruction he caused along the way. But the narrator? They were the quiet fighter. The one who left no trail of damage. The one who didn't need rescuing, but desperately needed support. Their success didn't dramatize the family's collective identity. It didn't validate their own choices or give them someone to fix. Instead, it reminded them of what they weren't, of the opportunities they missed, of the people they failed, and maybe even of the guilt they carry. Supporting the cousin might feel like redemption to them. Supporting the narrator might feel like confronting shame. That emotional calculus rewarding dysfunction while neglecting hard-earned success is soul-crushing. It leaves the narrator questioning their place in the family, their worth, even their identity. What does it mean to be good, to rise above, when your own blood doesn't seem to value it? There's a palpable sense of betrayal here, not just that the cousin was celebrated, but that the narrator was invisible. They're not just angry, they're heartbroken, disillusioned, and, most painfully, alone in their success. This story is also about how deeply class, race, and cultural expectations can shape the way families show love and pride. The narrator mentions being bullied for acting white and having a lighter complexion, suggesting that their success may have alienated them even more from a family that equates struggle and survival with authenticity. In that context, the cousin's return may feel more emotionally resonant to the family. His story fits the mold of what's expected and familiar. The narrator's doesn't. Their achievement becomes alien, even threatening, a mirror that reflects back everything the family isn't. Ultimately, this story is about grief for the celebration that never came, for the recognition that was never offered, for the familial love that feels contingent on failure rather than growth. The narrator doesn't want accolades or parades. They want to be seen. They want to feel like their pain and persistence meant something to the people who should have cared most. Instead, they're left wondering why someone who chose destruction gets more love than someone who chose to build. It's not petty to feel this way. It's human. It's devastating. And it speaks to a deeper wound, the one that comes from doing everything right in a world, or a family, that doesn't reward the right things. My fiancé and I broke up last night. My 6-year relationship ended last night. Now, I know this is Reddit, so you're expecting some Jerry Springer story. Over-the-top drama or fanfiction about cheating. This is not that, sorry to disappoint. It's two adults who sat down, talked, and realized this were not going to work out as we expected. I got laid off from my software job over a year ago. It was fully remote, and the industry for those kinds of jobs is so competitive I knew my next tech role would need to be at least partially on site. The industry where I'm at is non-existent, so I went back to serving this last year, and I hated it just as much as I did in college. I've been interviewing on and off for the last year, with very little luck. My fiancée is the opposite. Her job here is secure, a job she can ride for 40 years till retirement if she wanted. If she wants to change companies or roles, there's competition in the industry here she could go to. Relocating could happen if she wanted, but her family and friends are all here, and she very much wants to raise kids here. We talked about the possibilities of what would come when I got another job. We held out hope for a fully remote position, or one I could commute for. Those hopes never really panned out though. A month ago, a friend reached out with a position I fit really well in. It's at a company that will look amazing on my resume if I work there for a few years, and if I want to I could stay for a decade plus. From what he told me, I aced the interviews and am the guy they want. The problem is, it's on the other side of the USA and I will have to relocate. The fiancé and have talked it over several times this last month. What to do if I got the offer, what about her job, the logistics of everything. It did not look good. She doesn't want to move, but is not opposed to it. We talked about me moving first, and her staying until she found work there. Neither of us were very fond of this. We talked about maybe doing some long-distance thing too, no dice. Throughout this all, there was no animosity on her end. No drama, no hatred. She told me she felt bad several times because she knew I was staying in a place with bad job prospects for her. I told her that was not the case several times. Last week, they made a really competitive offer. Full coverage of my relocation, large sign-on bonus, great perks. I hesitated to accept since I wanted to talk with the fiancé about it more, but she encouraged me to take the job and we would figure out what to do from there. I think it all came down to the fact this last month has illustrated something we both didn't really want to realize, where we see ourselves in 10 years is not the same. She wants to stay here, be with her friends and family, raise kids in her hometown. I want to be somewhere else. Even if I didn't get the job offer, it did not change the fact I didn't want to live here long term. I'm willing, and able, to move around for work. I don't have the same need to live around my family here. There's much more to this than just one aspect of life. There are at least a dozen we've realized we don't match on. But, I don't feel like getting into it. So, last night, we talked again. We agreed it was best for me to move and start my new job. We had put the wedding plans on hold anyway when I got laid off, so it's not like we're canceling anything. We're going to trickle the news out over the weekend. I love her, and I know she loves me. She's my best friend, and she made it clear that won't change. But still, this sucks so much. Let me analyze this story for you. This story is quietly devastating, not in the explosive, scandalous way that many relationship breakdowns are, but in the slow, bittersweet unraveling of two lives that were once so deeply intertwined. It's not about betrayal or toxicity. It's about love, maturity, and the painful realization that compatibility is about more than just affection and time. It's about long-term alignment, and sometimes, no amount of love can bridge a fundamental divergence in life paths. At its core, this breakup is a story about divergence, two people who deeply care for each other, but who are ultimately oriented toward different futures. What makes this story particularly poignant is the absence of blame or anger. The narrator isn't vilifying his ex-fiancée, and she isn't holding him back. There's no screaming match, no impulsive decisions, no third-party betrayal. It's the kind of breakup that doesn't happen because something went wrong, but because everything else moved forward and the relationship couldn't go with it. This couple did everything right. They had the hard conversations. They made plans. They were transparent with one another. They even encouraged each other to chase what was best for themselves individually. That level of maturity is rare, and it's what makes the loss so much more difficult. There is no emotional safety net in anger or resentment, only the ache of knowing that someone you love deeply and sincerely just isn't meant to be your lifelong partner. The story is also layered with themes of sacrifice, self-realization, and the limits of compromise. For the narrator, the last year has been one of stagnation and discomfort, losing a remote software job and returning to an industry he had hoped to leave behind. That limbo pushed the couple into existential questions about their future. Where do we live? How do we prioritize career versus family? What does permanence look like for each of us? While his fiancée was rooted in job security, family ties, emotional familiarity, he was adrift, needing the flexibility to go where the opportunities are. Their respective visions for the future were no longer in sync, even though their hearts were. There's also an unspoken tragedy in how time factors into all of this. 6 years together is not casual, it's significant. It's long enough to make someone part of your identity. Long enough to plan a life and imagine a future. But as often happens, the test of a relationship isn't just how long you've been together, it's whether your shared dreams can continue to evolve alongside your individual ones. In this case, they couldn't. The job offer becomes the narrative fulcrum, the turning point that forces a theoretical conversation into real-world consequences. It's a moment of clarity. The offer is more than just a professional opportunity, it's a symbol of change, a harbinger of the inevitable. The narrator doesn't just have to decide whether to accept a job, he has to decide if he's willing to reshape his entire life, or ask someone else to reshape theirs. And he chooses, heartbreakingly, to let go of a relationship rather than live in a place or a life that he knows isn't right for him. In the end, this story is about the hardest kind of love to lose, the kind where nothing is actually wrong, except the fundamental direction you're both going. The kind where mutual respect and affection still exist, but aren't enough to counterbalance the reality that love alone doesn't sustain a life together. There's a deep emotional intelligence in how the narrator frames the experience, no histrionics, no scapegoats, just grief and gratitude coexisting. He isn't just mourning the loss of a fiancé, he's mourning the loss of a best friend, a shared vision, and the version of his life he once thought he was building. And perhaps most heartbreakingly of all, he's also mourning the loss of simplicity, the hope that love would be enough to solve the problem of what comes next. It's a quiet, slow heartbreak, but no less powerful for it. I think my husband is a fork thief. This is a throwaway, but I need to get this out there. I, 43F, think my husband, 55M, is stealing forks from other people's houses. Why would he do this? I have no idea. He's always been a little loose with taking things. But it usually was low stakes. A coffee table from his dorm room that was already getting new furniture when he moved out. A frame from the art store where he worked, because it was cracked on one side and was getting thrown out anyway. A single spoon from the restaurant where I worked, as a memory because we loved the soup. When new forks started appearing, he explained that they were left at the office by coworkers and never claimed. So he'd use one and bring it home to clean it, then never take it back. At first, I thought having lots of different forks was fun. Quirky. Eccentric. The kids and I nicknamed them. The one with Art Deco designs is Roaring Twenties. The one with a rose at the end is Kiss from a Rose. One with particularly long tines is Throat Stabber. And we all have our preferred forks and sometimes fight over them. But last week, a new fork appeared out of nowhere. He doesn't go to the office anymore, so it couldn't have come from there. I really like this new fork and I haven't named it yet. It has a nice weight to it, good heft. The tines aren't too long, and they're perfectly spaced for spearing. It's probably a dessert fork, I guess. I don't know silverware, which is nice for my smaller hands. I asked my husband where it came from, and he said he had no idea. Maybe it just got shuffled in with the other forks from the office. I decided to let it go, probably because I like the fork. Does this make me complicit? Maybe. This morning is when I am seriously considering we have a problem. Because yet another fork appeared. This one is a lot like the last, similar engravings on the handle, but not the same design. Unlike my new favorite, this one is a regular-sized fork. Still, I thought maybe they're the same fork, my new favorite, and this one. But I got them both out, put them side by side. Different forks. My husband went to a friend's house to hang out last night. Did he take it from there? My mind is whirling with possibilities, so I did the very un-Reddit-like thing and just asked. Hey, this is new. Where did it come from? And he shrugged. No idea. I said, okay, well, that's weird because I didn't bring it in. Our younger daughter didn't. Did our older daughter? And we kind of laughed. But I'm onto him. I just have no way of getting proof. Also, what if I'm wrong? I suck at figuring out when people are lying. Even though I believe my husband is the culprit, here's a list of other potential suspects: our 18-year-old, who sometimes goes to different friends' houses. Our 14-year-old, who never goes anywhere except school. I guess she could be nicking forks from friends' sack lunches? And me. I don't really go anywhere, but maybe I'm sneaking out while I sleep like some kind of somnambulistic cutlery burglar, I don't know. I think it's my husband. As far as I can tell, that's the only explanation. And I can't go around besmirching his good name to our friends and family, so I came here to be anonymous and get it off my chest. If you're missing some cutlery, I guess I can check my silverware drawer for you. Even if it didn't come from your house, there's a good chance I have a match. Let me analyze this story for you. At first glance, this post might read like a lighthearted domestic comedy, a wife writing about the possibility that her husband is stealing forks from other people's homes. But beneath the playful tone and humorous narration lies a deeper exploration of trust, curiosity, and the subtle disorientations that accumulate over time in long-term relationships. The fork mystery isn't really about forks. It's about that peculiar, low-stakes unease that arises when you notice something off in the behavior of someone you thought you knew inside and out. Over time, tiny inconsistencies begin to take on outsized emotional weight, not because they're threatening, but because they're unexplained. The narrator's tone is both whimsical and wary. She opens with a question: why would he do this? Framing her husband's potential fork theft as both baffling and oddly believable. She catalogs his past history of harmless theft, softening it with rationalizations. The coffee table was going to be replaced, the frame was cracked, the spoon was sentimental. This background matters not just for context, but because it shows us how deeply she wants to believe he's not doing anything truly wrong. There's a quiet desperation in the way she defends him at first, still loyal, still generous, still looking for the most charitable interpretation. But the repeated pattern, especially now that he no longer goes to the office, pushes her toward a troubling possibility. Maybe she doesn't know everything about her husband after all. What's striking is how this seemingly absurd story reflects a universal marital experience. The moment when you begin to question something about your partner that you've always overlooked, dismissed, or quietly accepted. The new forks arriving in the drawer serve as a tangible symbol of something intangible, the creeping sense that your partner might have habits, quirks, or even secrets you're not fully privy to. And this is delivered not with melodrama, but with dry humor and subtle self-doubt. The narrator admits she could be wrong. She even questions herself as a suspect, half-jokingly wondering if she might be sleep-stealing forks in some fugue state. This blend of suspicion, humor, and humility is what makes the post feel so deeply human and believable. The family's naming of the forks, throat stabber, roaring 20s, kiss from a rose adds a layer of quirky, affectionate intimacy to the narrative. This isn't just about theft, it's about how mundane objects, especially in a household with children, take on stories and identities of their own. These forks have become minor characters in the family's life, complete with personalities and rivalries. The kids fight over them. The mom picks favorites. In that way, the forks serve a double purpose. They're both the source of mystery and the embodiment of shared domestic life. That the narrator likes the new fork, despite its dubious origins, highlights a very human moral flexibility. She might be disturbed, but she's also enjoying the benefits. She wonders aloud if this makes her complicit, and it's both funny and telling that she seriously considers that question. But the emotional undertow arrives in the final paragraph. The narrator clearly suspects her husband but is reluctant to say it out loud. She doesn't want to accuse him, doesn't want to besmirch his good name, and instead chooses to voice her suspicion anonymously on Reddit. This reflects a delicate marital boundary, the space between what we suspect about our loved ones and what we're willing to say to their faces. Her decision to come here, to a place of strangers, is not about outing him, but about finding a safe place to express uncertainty. The post becomes less about forks and more about needing affirmation that it's okay to be confused, even in a loving relationship. That it's okay to notice something small and weird and want to understand it, without that meaning your entire marriage is unraveling. In the end, this post is a brilliant slice of modern domestic writing. It's humorous, poignant, and emotionally honest. It explores themes of intimacy, ambiguity, and the small cracks in the everyday fabric of a life shared with someone else. It makes us laugh, but also reminds us how much we want to believe we truly know the people we love, even if sometimes they might be secretly collecting other people's forks. My job is really taking a toll on me, so much that I actually booked an appointment to get professional help. This is gonna be a long post. I just really need to let it all out. And also, English is not my first language, so please bear with me. I'm a newbie nurse working at a private hospital in Caloocan City, Philippines. I know we all reach that point where work gets really hard, and I know it's totally normal to feel that way. I mean, who really wants to work anyway? Ha ha. But I don't think it has to reach to this point where I would need professional help. Anyway, here's what's been happening. I've noticed some changes in myself these past few weeks. I've been getting way more emotional when it comes to work. I'd break down before my shift, after work, and sometimes even while at work. I'd go to the restroom just to cry. I'm not really the type to open up, but lately, I've been reaching out to close friends because I honestly don't know what to do with what I'm feeling at the moment. It even got to the point where I vented to my mom, telling her how I'm really struggling and that I feel like I'm getting depressed because of work. I've always considered myself more of a homebody, not someone who likes going out, but recently I've been asking friends to hang out on my days off, or I'd tag along with my mom on her errands, just so I don't have to stay home. Being at home feels too quiet and it makes me overthink even more. That's so new to me, because I used to love being alone, especially at home. But now, I hate the feeling of being alone. It makes me feel like I'm going crazy. I'm really at my lowest, and people around me are starting to notice too. I've had coworkers ask me if I'm okay because they say my vibe feels different. One time, a friend messaged me out of the blue asking if I'd been crying or if something was wrong. She saw a photo of me with friends and said my eyes looked so sad even though I was smiling. When it comes to skills and my coworkers, everything's good. All my senior nurses are kind and patient. They're the ones who taught me everything I know now. They've been really helpful when I had questions, and I know for sure that my skills aren't the issue. I don't get complaints during evaluations. In fact, they even said that I'm a fast learner and they trust me to handle things on my own. I've never made any serious errors or gotten any incident report. The main problem is the company itself. It's their expectations and their complete lack of empathy for their staff. Like one time, I had to stay 2 hours overtime because of a sudden direct admission right at the end of my shift, plus a hypotensive patient, BP was 80/40, another patient in the middle of a blood transfusion who suddenly had chills, and a pedia patient who was super agitated and at risk of seizures. After all that, I was told my OT wasn't valid because the nurse-to-patient ratio was still okay. Our hospital has a 1:8 nurse-to-patient ratio, and the census wasn't that high. That's just one of the many OTs I wasn't allowed to file because of the same reason. And just recently, they even cut 30 minutes from my 1 hour and 30 minutes OT pay, saying it might get questioned. Imagine, just 30 minutes and they still wouldn't give it. And that's just a few of the things we go through. To give you an idea of how bad it is, more than 10 employees submitted resignation letters just this June alone. I know one of the easiest solutions is to quit, but it's not that simple. First of all, I'm a newbie. A lot of places are looking for nurses with experience, and it's not that easy to find a new job right away. Another reason is the salary. It is actually higher than what a lot of other hospitals offer. I don't come from a well-off family, so this kind of salary really means a lot to me. But sometimes I find myself asking, is it still worth it if it's at the cost of my mental health? So now here I am, booked a session for psychiatric help because I just haven't been feeling like myself lately. I don't recognize myself anymore. But honestly, I'm still hesitating. I'm scared of what might happen or what I would find out about myself during this session. Let me analyze this story for you. The story opens with a gentle self-effacement. The writer prefaces their post by warning that it's long and apologizes for any language mistakes, which immediately establishes a voice of vulnerability and humility. This tone, open, but a little guarded, mirrors the emotional state the narrator is in. They're reaching out for support, but cautiously. The act of sharing such a personal struggle online, anonymously, speaks to how isolated they must feel in real life. This framing signals to the reader, I need help, but I don't know where else to put this pain. From the very beginning, the emotional stakes feel incredibly human. As the narrative continues, the writer describes their context, a newbie nurse at a private hospital in Caloocan, Philippines. This detail matters. It tells us that the stress isn't just personal, but structural. The healthcare system in many countries puts impossible pressure on nurses, and here we have someone just starting out, already being ground down by the emotional and physical demands of a job that is supposed to be about care. The irony is cutting. The job of healing others is making this person sick. And yet, the narrator almost minimizes their distress by joking, who really wants to work anyway? Haha, a self-protective bit of humor meant to lighten the dark emotional truth. This job is breaking me. What follows is perhaps the most emotionally raw part of the story, the descriptions of crying before, during, and after work. This is not just burnout, it's psychological distress. The narrator acknowledges that they've changed, and they don't like the change. The quiet dignity of those restroom cries is particularly affecting. They're not storming out or making a scene, they're stepping away, hiding their pain, trying to hold it together. Even more heartbreaking is the shift in how they relate to solitude. Once a comfort, being alone now feels dangerous, like it might unlock a flood of thoughts they can't handle. This inversion speaks volumes about the severity of their emotional state. When silence becomes your enemy, something has deeply shifted inside you. The reaction of the people around them, friends who notice sadness in their eyes, co-workers sensing a different vibe, is poignant. It underscores that the narrator is not imagining their suffering. It's visible. It's bleeding out into the social fabric around them. And yet, even with these red flags waving clearly, the narrator still doubts themselves, still wonders if they're overreacting. This is such a painful hallmark of mental health struggles, the constant gaslighting of the self. You feel terrible, but you question whether you're allowed to feel terrible. Next, the narrator shifts to the one part of the job that isn't making them miserable, the work itself. They make it clear that they're competent, supported, and respected by their peers and seniors. This is a crucial point. So many stories of job-related burnout focus on interpersonal conflict or incompetence, but not here. The emotional pain isn't coming from failure, it's coming from a system that dehumanizes even its best workers. That distinction adds moral weight to the story. The narrator isn't weak, unqualified, or unlucky. They're simply caught in a toxic, uncaring structure. The emotional climax of the story comes in the retelling of the overtime experience: multiple critical patients, 2 hours of extended work, only to be told their labor was invalid, not worthy of compensation. This is the heart of the conflict, the absolute erasure of humanity in the name of bureaucracy. The logic is maddening. Even after giving extra time and emotional energy in a crisis, the company decides their suffering doesn't count because ratios were okay. It's one of those moments that makes you want to scream on the narrator's behalf. And what's worse, it's clearly a pattern, one of many indignities that employees are just expected to swallow. Despite the pain, the narrator doesn't present quitting as an easy solution. They offer a rational, grounded explanation for staying. They're new, they need experience, and this job pays better than others. This is the trap so many workers, especially in under-resourced professions like nursing, face. The story isn't just about burnout, it's about economic entrapment. The narrator knows the job is harming them, but also knows they need it. And in that impossible space between needing to survive and needing to feel sane, something inside them is breaking. The final paragraphs are perhaps the most emotionally impactful. The narrator has booked a session for psychiatric help, a huge, brave step. But instead of feeling relief, they feel fear. What if they learn something they don't want to know about themselves? This fear of diagnosis, of facing the full truth of their condition, is incredibly relatable. There's strength in the act of reaching out, but also dread. The story closes not with resolution, but with an emotional cliffhanger. They've taken the first step, but they don't yet trust the ground beneath them. In summary, this post is a quietly devastating portrait of burnout, alienation, and survival in a hostile work environment. It offers no neat ending, no moral, no dramatic twist. And that's what makes it so powerful. It's real. It captures the slow erosion of identity that can happen when your labor is exploited, your pain is minimized, and your coping mechanisms begin to fail. The narrator's voice is honest, exhausted, self-aware, and brave. And by sharing their story, they do more than vent, they shine a light on what so many others are silently enduring.